Welcome to a new Motorsport.com F1 update from the Qatar paddock. After the sprint race, I have to say not the most exciting sprint race ever, but we'll come about that a bit later. So after the sprint race and of course after main qualifying. But first, before coming to the boring racing probably around this track, first we have to talk about the man of the day. Oscar Piastri won the sprint. Basically that was a matter of not messing up the start and then keeping his position into turn one, and after that he could quite comfortably control the race. But maybe even more important, securing pole position for the main Grand Prix. He didn't put a foot wrong, basically. It confirms everything we talked about in the last couple of days, that he feels much more comfortable in the McLaren car on this type of circuit. So more high speed, but more importantly, much more high grip. And that's what he needs. That's what suits his driving style better. That's what Andrea Stella explained just before this video in his post-qualifying media session. So a good day for Oscar. We have to say Lando didn't get it spot on once again, just like in sprint qualifying. Now also in main qualifying, he made a mistake in the Q3 that cost him the final run. And usually it would have cost him much more. But the fact that he's still on the front row basically tells you everything you need to know about how quick McLaren is in the medium speed, in the high speed, and therefore around this circuit. Because, you know, if it would have been closer than missing the final run, especially with the track evolution you have here, could have been much more painful for Lando than what it is. Lando still found it a bit painful that he has to start on the dirty side of the grid. Max Verstappen immediately countered, maybe also to put a bit of pressure on him by saying, well, last year I also started on P2, also dirty side of the grid, and I had a pretty good start. So that should not be an excuse, but let's wait and see how that pans out tomorrow. Now we're talking about Max and Lando. Automatically brings us to quite an amusing bit. Max Verstappen, I mean, he said it before, but he said it again this week, that if he would be driving that McLaren car, he would have been world champion by now, and also for some time by now. Lando Norris, that was in the press conference after the sprint race, got asked about Max's quotes. And he said, well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Max Verstappen. He's a four-time world champion. He earned the right to say whatever he wants to. Usually he's talking sense, but he said sometimes he's also talking nonsense. And in this case, Lando thought Max was talking complete nonsense. The funny bit is, at the end of the day, Max Verstappen held his Dutch media session in the paddock. And of course, he got asked about Lando's comments. And Max replied and said, well, I'm not talking nonsense. I'm just putting the facts out there. So Max Verstappen thinks it's a fact that he would have been a world champion much earlier. Of course, we will never know. It's also all part of playing a bit of mind games, because usually if you would ask Max about the opposition, he would always say, well, that's not a question for me and I'm not going to respond to that. And these weeks he's basically confirming everything and saying, yeah, when you fight for your first world title, it brings a bit more pressure. And I even felt that myself in 21, the years after that. You have the experience and it felt differently. That's all part of playing some mind games, putting the pressure on McLaren. At the same time, it's also a fair assessment because Max does not have any pressure, basically got nothing to lose. And the pressure is on Lando because they have much more to lose also in tomorrow's race. And that's exactly why McLaren CEO Zak Brown said this evening that he expects Max Verstappen to go for it, like go all in tomorrow into turn one. Also probably makes sense to do it because turn one might be the only opportunity you get because of following being so difficult around this track. When talking about Max Verstappen, he was still not fully happy with Red Bull's performance in qualifying. Yes, the bouncing got better. He said, well, the bouncing was still there, but it was much more controlled now. But he said we have one key limitation in our car, and that limitation cannot be fixed. It's not fixed with the upgrades of this year. He said, whatever we do, we cannot get rid of that limitation. And in the Dutch media session, he expanded a bit, and he said, well, that limitation is a crazy amount of understeer in the long, medium-speed corners. And here in Qatar, you have quite some long, medium-speed corners, and that's why he already anticipated this weekend to be more difficult than some of the others. And that's also probably why Monza was really good, why Baku was really good, because at those tracks, you don't really have this type of corner. So it basically fits in with Max's analysis. Helmut Marko, I talked to him after qualifying. He's a bit more optimistic by saying, well, on the medium and on the hard tire, we look a bit more competitive than on the soft. So we might use that to our advantage. Still, question marks remain about if you can really use that, because following is so tricky around here that if you don't have track position, it becomes really, really complicated. Really complicated is also the word that we have to use when talking about Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton once again out in Q1. It was SQ1 yesterday, Q1 today. And Lewis said, yeah, I basically could not imagine to find myself in battles like this, even being in a massive fight to just get out of Q1. So Lewis disappointed. Charles once again made the most of it and at least cut his car into Q3. But afterwards, talking in the media pen, he said this weekend we simply have zero performance. That were the words that he used to sum up Ferrari's weekend so far, which sounds like a fair assessment. I mean, John Elkann told them not to talk too much, but I think this is a fair assessment, especially when you jump out of the car and face the media 5 minutes after that. Where we have a negative surprise being Ferrari, the positive surprise is, of course, Isack Hadjar again. Helmut Marko said, well, Yuki Tsunoda, a bit disappointing today. Usually he cannot make the step on a Saturday going into qualifying. Hadjar is able to make that step, and that's one of the key strengths Hadjar has, according to Helmut Marko. The other one that relates to a funny bit on the media day here in Qatar is that Marko said, well, the other strength is that wherever we take Isack, the first couple of laps on the track he doesn't know, he's immediately quick. And that's kind of a similarity that Marko sees between Hadjar and Max Verstappen, and one of the reasons that they most likely will be teammates next year. But the funny bit is when we talked about that to Hadjar, Hadjar said, well, when I talk to Marko on the phone, he never praises me like that. So it's always about the negative points and not about the positive points. I mean, that's also the role Helmut Marko has. But today, I think some praise would be valid because Isack Hadjar put in a really good qualifying performance. To finish it off, we have to talk about two topics. The first one we touched upon at the beginning of the video, and that's the fact that Qatar is maybe not the best track to produce some great racing. All F1 drivers love it in terms of a qualifying lap because it has a lot of high-speed corners, no really slow speed, and the current ground effect cars are pretty poor in the low speed, also too big, too heavy, but they are awesome in the high speed. So that's why a qualifying lap around here is quite a special experience. Having said that, following is extremely difficult in all those high-speed corners, and that's what made the sprint race a bit of a snooze fest, and let's hope that Sunday's race will be better. One of the suggestions that has come up is to maybe extend the DRS zone a little bit. It's what George Russell mentioned already on Friday, and it's also discussed in the driver's briefing. But I just talked to the FIA and it will not happen because the FIA said, well, first of all, there might be a little bit of a safety concern. But secondly, we shared all our DRS zones already with all the teams back in February. No one complained about Qatar. And then going into the weekend, people start to complain. But then to reboot all the systems and to change it during the weekend is a little bit risky, according to the FIA. So they prefer not to do that. Having said that, the question remains if even extending the DRS would be the solution. Because I asked George Russell today in the press conference, and he said, well, in the sprint I basically didn't have DRS, so it wouldn't matter anyway. And he said the bigger issue is that the corners before the main straight are really, really high speed. And in those high speed corners, following is incredibly tough, especially for the front left tire, because Max Verstappen explained it in a bit more detail. And he said, well, if you're in the dirty air, if you try to follow someone in those fast-flowing corners, then only 2 or 3 laps, and basically the front left tire is already overheating, and you're basically unable to follow the car in front for any longer. So then you can extend the DRS, but if the car is not able to follow, then probably that's not even the solution. So let's hope that everyone in this paddock is wrong and that Sunday's race will bring some excitement, but maybe we shouldn't get our hopes up because, yeah, it's a great track for qualifying, but not for racing. And that's why Isack Hadjar even compared it to Monaco. It's probably Monaco without walls because here you have a lot of runoff. But he said, just like Monaco, the qualifying experience is phenomenal. Racing is, pretty dull at times. Having said that, we still have the maximum stint length. So probably some more things to play with in terms of trying an undercut or an overcut. Also, unfortunate safety car timings can play a bit more of a role if you have 2 pit stop sequences. So that's something to keep an eye on tomorrow. The final topic came up today. It's basically beyond this race weekend, but it's about Christian Horner. Still a lot of speculation about his future and his potential plans to come back to Formula One. And part of that is that he was linked to Aston Martin quite often in the recent months. And even after they announced the Adrian Newey promotion, then a lot of media outlets questioned to what extent Adrian would really take all the responsibilities of a team principal. That's including sponsorship things, meetings, F1 commission, media commitments. And they thought that maybe Christian Horner could take at least a part of those responsibilities in like a more senior role, not the team principal, but a more senior role, and then also come back, including the shares that he desires. But today, Aston Martin clarified that it's not going to happen. Some sources indicated that Lawrence Stroll addressed the factory on Wednesday to talk about Adrian Newey's promotion, and he explicitly told all the people in the factory that, okay, there's a lot of speculation about potentially hiring Christian Horner, but that will not happen, and not in any role. So Aston Martin really wanted to put an end to all speculations, and yes, probably Horner is still thinking about a way back into the sport, maybe in a more senior role than just team principal. He also likes to have shares, but it will all not happen with Aston Martin. So that's clarified today. Tomorrow, all focus on the actual on-track action and the racing. Let's hope it's a bit better than what it was on Saturday. Anyway, no matter what happens, of course, with Lando Norris on his first ever match point for the F1 World title, we'll be back with a new F1 update late in the evening. So for now, thanks a lot for watching and hope to see you again tomorrow.